So the next game is Stanton versus WarWolf, game number 1. Let me see
Yes,
Stanton deck, Stanton. Damn it.
yes. So now this is a bit. So for this cup, for everyone, then there was the choice for players. The default was best of one, but also there was a rule that if both players agree, you can before the game starts, you can choose to do a best of three. So the first two games we've seen, as far as I know, they're best of ones.
Agree?
But this next we're going into is going to be a best of three. So that's going to be interesting because I think it's like you say, especially if they're somewhat close in scale, it's going to be a lot of interesting because I don't think I assume though that they don't know much each other. So after the first or having played once each other and see how they adapt to their play styles for the following games.
Yeah, so the first deck for Stanton is 5th Cav Motorizata, Romanian division. Not so far ago considered the best Axis division for 1v1, mainly because of very cheap and cost efficient infantry, recon cars, and of course support units like, for example, clusters. We have seen how effective clusters can be in a previous game.
Yes, yes, exactly. And looking at the deck here, I would say it looks pretty standard and pretty good. Like, yes, the deck isn't closed. It's not the S tier it was before. It's I would say it's still upper half, but it's lost some of its shine. But it still has a lot of really good things that they got to do. So looking at it, I would say like at the deck, I don't see any like grievous sins. Like there are certainly like smaller things that maybe could be like a bit more optimized, but in the large picture, I don't see any like weird things that really is off for a 1v1 deck.
Yeah, certainly agree. I think that it's the deck is nice. I would consider looking at this deck from better players. Maybe vetted Granissary is a weird choice. Maybe also bringing two cluster cards in B and having one more cluster cards in A is a bit overkill. But maybe he has plan for the game. So basically for this deck, cheap, cost efficient, you can consider it spam is the way to go. You have cheap mortars, cheap off map, cheap planes, cheap infantry, very cheap Breda, which is a small AT gun and IG gun with very good rate of fire. He has leaders, like he basically has everything he needs to win. And not forget, Resita is one of the best AT guns in the game.
Certainly,
Oh,
certainly, yes. Yeah, it's like you say. It's maybe the cluster paint's a little bit like slightly off. I would also say like the Gunnisary, and then I would say the other one is the E7 Messerschmitt. I think is yeah, it's a bit of a trap. It's hard to know, but if you play it, you'll notice that the E7 because it has very bad resilience, so it really doesn't really fight against do well in many fights against other things.
okay, so let's take a look at WarWolf game number 1 deck, and this is Gruppe Harteneck Maverick. I'm curious who was picking first, but we know that Harteneck doesn't have too big a 8 up, and we know that at least for A, we can already see that he has 6 cards of Flak 38 20mm, not vetted, with transport also being Flak AA. But we know that Stanton has mortar. 40 point mortar is enough to suppress one battery if he keeps them together. Of course, there are tigers, but tigers are pretty much breakfast for Resitas or cluster bombers, and it's not like Stux cannot penetrate them in close range either.
Yes, exactly. I think that yeah, I would say this deck is quite similar in the sense that you don't see any grave errors. It's a good decent deck. There's maybe some things you could tweak a little bit to make more efficient, but it really I think both decks show that they know what they're doing. Like for example, getting the flak 20mm with its AA transport and all of that. Uh, One of the things I would change then is yet again MG are really good, and I would say Kosaken isn't that good, and also when it comes to 20 millimeter, I would like to give them at least one bet. But these are some nitpicky things. The other one is MGs, especially Ersatz MGs, which are really cheap for an MG squad.
Yeah, I I kind of agree with Kozaken. I don't really like them. I think they are not that necessary. You have Aufklarer if you really need dedicated recon. You have a lot of infantry. We'll see what the map is, but unless it's like I know, like whatever the map is, infantry is okay or decent at spotting most of the time. And you are not going to do like huge armored assault like 21st Panzer or 16th Panzer or that kind of stuff. So you are good to go with T-34s you have here. One piece of the equipment which Hatternack has, and this is pretty unique, it's Hetzer, so Jagd Panzer 38T. Do you like them? Do you use them yourself?
Yeah, I like them. I think that they're pretty good. Like they cost the same as a Stug, but they have the APCR as well. So I think they're very well. Like in this matchup, I think of course, I wouldn't. If you assume that they built the deck, I think that's a bit advanced though. Like specifically building a deck against whatever you're up against. It's hard for a new player because you would actually have to have good knowledge of like all the other decks that are out there. Because in this matchup you don't need that many ATs. You would maybe need some more support things like MGs I said before to get, because what you're up against is good infantry, very few tank options. But then again, that would be assuming that he knows he built the deck before, and also it's I think hard especially for Greenhorns to really be able to have that knowledge. But if you just take it as a normal deck, I think it would be quite good. Maybe just like I said, slightly tune it back to less AT, more infantry support.
Yeah, but WarWolf is my spiritual winner of the match because instead of infantry commandant, he brings the Beth Panzer to see, and I love to see some unique choices in the deck. But yeah, not picking MGs in the support tab. A bit too much AT capabilities because you have more tanks than 5th Cav. Like you don't really need that much. Not only he brought tanks, not only he brought AT tab. He has a lot of AT infantry. He also brought a AT plane himself, pretty expensive one. I don't really like this M410A1 because like it takes so long to get a good approach, and if you miss the first one, you will do at least 3 circles before you actually fire, and that's usually annoys me a lot.
Yeah, I very much understand where you are. I still end up using it sometimes because, you especially now that you don't like if you don't know what you're up against, you might need it in certain points. But yes, and here we have the E4 as well, which I think is another E Messerschmitt E, which is interesting. So both player has the E Messerschmitt, which is a very I think Messerschmitt E versions are not something it's worth picking. They're just not worth, like they cost very slightly less in points. They're still very slow. They have like not have good they don't have good damage, but they're like going from bad to very bad resilience is not good. We know that when if we look at air right now, Fokker Wolves, Tempest, and those, they're really the kings, and everyone says that they're super strong. They're top tier airplanes. And why? One of the main points is their medium resilience, and that's what makes them better than many other fighter bombers or fighters being just bad resilience. Then going the step lower to go to very bad resilience, it's not ending. It's not a nice story for the Messerschmitt E.
Yeah, if any kid ever wants to become a meta fighter bomber in Steel Division 2, you should tell him to have 2 things. First, medium resilience, and second, more than 500 kilometers per hour speed. Usually it's more than enough to escape like heavy AA saturated area and bomb what you want. Okay, so this was WarWolf deck. We have seen 5th Cavalier Motorizata from Stanton just before. Let's jump into the replay itself. In the meantime, chat, I'm sorry that I'm not like, I'm reading all the time. I'm not really talking because I want it to be like pretty consistent cast, so new players can just watch the game on YouTube and learn a bit, especially that we have good guy a lot around.
Yeah, I think the only other smallest nitpick I would do in the end is that, which is hard for especially new players now, that it's just in the recent patch, Hartneck's Jag actually got a buff to some of their Jagger infantry that only costs now 20 points, where you can get a lot of MP40s. I think they're not like an amazing squad, but they're still pretty decent now that they only cost. They're still pretty good now that they only cost 20 points, and they have quite a high amount of men compared to other like Automachikis and similar squads.
All right. To be honest, I think I downloaded a bad replay because I downloaded the desync. So we go to Cell 50 minutes match, all right? But this is by the way, divisions we just checked. So Cell 50-minute match between WarWolf and Stanton Warrior.
That's game 2. We're starting with game 1, right?
Yeah, but game 1, at least in my says that this is shredded in desync 0-0 time.
Oh, for me it's working.
Okay, and you used my replay. All right, let's do it.
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't work if you try to start it either, I guess.
Okay, but we picked bad division, so we'll basically talk about the decks after the game in that case. Because this is 6 Airborne against Panzer Lehr. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I'll speed to the fastest. I really hate this map. I hate that on this map, if you lose the right hand sand hill from my perspective hill, usually it's really hard to come back. Mostly for both sides.
Yes. I think that, like, compared to many other maps, it's quite a balanced map, but it's like you say, it's a very punishing map in the sense that if you lose that southern hill, it's tough to retake, especially as a red player. But even more so, like, once one of the center hills are captured of the enemy, that often, like in 95% of the cases for this map, really spells doom for that player.
Yeah, the deployment starts at 5 minutes 52 seconds. So let you roll to that. I will talk a bit about matchup before we have seen divisions. So WarWolf is playing as 6 Airborne, and 6 Airborne is was considered one of the most meta divisions recently. I'm not sure about current patch, but on previous patch, I would say it's also one of the most cancerous decks to play against. Why? First, because it has Tempest. So what we were describing previously, 500 kilometers per hour and more speed bomber with medium resilience. It means that they can dive, bomb whatever they want, escape, and come back in 2 minutes. And they have infinite ammo and infinite sorties, and you have limited number of AA, ammo, and so on in your deck. Also, they are very, very good fighters, so maintaining air superiority against 6 Airborne, maybe it's not impossible, but it's really, really hard task to do. And it has like 90% of ban ratio and 80% of win ratio in League in previous season for a reason. We'll see how things evolved with current patch and current meta in this one, but in previous season, 6 Airborne was no joke. All right, Alot,
yes.
Are you around? 5 minutes already?
Ready.
Okay. So let's go. Let's start 3, 2, 1. And in the meantime, what do you think about Panzer Lehr, Alot?
I think that Panzer Lehr used to be a very, very good division. Now I think it's a good one. Like the good thing with Panzer Lehr is that you have a lot of fancy things. The downside though is that it's a very activation costly division. So while you have a lot of nice things, you really have to get to pick what you can do. but I still think it's a good Panzer division because it has, you know, a lot of nice tanks, and it has a lot of nice armored cars, which is, and the other tabs are also still quite decent. And and you do have Fokker wolves, even though it's a very small amount. You do have them. Uh, but one thing they do have, which interesting here, I think Stanton might know, is that there's one big weakness for six. While they are, like you said, one amazing deck and really really strong, their biggest weakness is in a phase being swarmed by light medium tanks, because they only have a few Tetrarchs, maybe some Little Johns, and they're not that many six pounders, and that's all they have to deal. So if you really can like deal with it, like just like T-34s, like several T-34s can be an issues for six, because they can really be overwhelmed. And I think that's one of the ways that you usually deal with six. And now that Stanton is Vanguard against the flatline, that I think that's what his game plan is. He really needs to overwhelm those few things that can deal with his armor before WarWolf can build up the Air Force, because that's what 6th Airborne is. They're building a very strong Air Force.
Yep. Also, in the meantime, 2 Flak Whirling on double vet, upvetted to 3 vet by Panzer 3 Führer, stabbed the Mosquito. This Mosquito was hanging in the air for last at least 1 minute. That's I think kind of mistake from Wolf, because it's 135 points doing nothing. And in the meantime, Panzerwaffe from light Panzerwaffe from Stanton in the middle, 5 Panzer 3 Ages rolling the middle. And even though he lost 1 flag in the town, this flag is easily recoverable. I think that WarWolf will have hard time with light vehicles unless he start bombing them to pieces. It's not like Tetrarchs will win you armor superiority against this.
Yeah, I would say that's the thing, is like Panzer III is maybe one of the few light tanks that actually Tetrarchs trade favorably for. But as you can see, there's just so many of them, and I think that this is one thing that is Stanton does very well here. He's really playing the meta. Like on this map, what we've recently been seeing in the league, the meta is in this southern like road where you have where this dreaded hill, as we talked about, is. It's you run up there, get an APs to defend, and just spam IG guns, anti-tank guns, and tanks. And then usually the opponent does the same, and winning that fight is very important. But here we see Stanton knows of this, and he really went heavy doing this meta, and it seems to be working. He's really taking this this lower level here, and if he can move around and cut off the hill, then it's gonna be then he can slowly then take the hill as well. It's just he's gonna have to be careful that he makes sure that he attacks with several Panzer force against those Tetrarchs at the same time, because 1 against 1, those Tetrarchs are gonna shred Panzer IIIs.
In the meantime, few mistakes from both parties. I think that WarWolf was either not like warmed up before the game, or he rarely plays with aircraft. We could see him bombing empty spot earlier, miscalculating with the Mosquito, and earlier like evacuating prematurely, not dropping the bombs. Of course, Tempest give him some space to make mistakes, because this is the best player in the game. But it's still a mistake which, you know, could make you killing 1 more Puma or 1 more SPW, and sooner or later these SPWs will give you a headache. Not to mention Stanton is already winning. Oh, right now it's 13-11, but it was 14-10 for a second.
Yes, and yes, that Typhon is a lot of investment to kill a single Panzer III. But as we then see there, like right now for Stanton, he's doing the right play here, but it feels like he got this initial one, but now it seems like he doesn't really know what to do exactly. He has a lot of armored cars in the middle, not doing anything at the moment, while there's only an air landing and a sniper holding off this hill that we talked about earlier is very important to take. While in the middle, meantime, he's playing very good defensively in the city. Usually what people, as we said, they really focus on the south because the city is easier to retake. To play more defensive in the city, which we see here. WarWolf has he invested a lot of Canadian paratroopers in the north here. And it's a lot of points that he's not really been able to utilize. And when he's done a few pushes, the Panzer IIIs have been able to push off those infantry So I think in the city, Stanton is doing very well. He doesn't invest a lot of points, but he still holds off WarWolf from using his large investment here to gain anything, while then using those additional points in the south instead to actually gain ground. And here we see the Flak 88 coming up to really prevent further AA from air. I mean, from coming in.
Yeah, not only flag 38, flag 41, there is also flag 40, 38 coming. Stanton even has reserve P4 going into the back. Another time we see WarWolf a bit mismicroing his mosquitoes, missing one approach, changing the approach to the other, but this was too close to mosquito to take good angle. And we can see that Stanton is going to 16-8, taking complete superiority even in the middle. If he just moves a little bit further, this will be really rough spot for WarWolf to come back.
Think one thing that both is missing here is that they're quite like passive, not using the troops that are not they're only using in the middle here. Like we can see here, Stanton having a lot of infantry. Right now he needs more infantry in the middle to just take that hill, while we see WarWolf invested a lot of points in air. And when you're on the side that doesn't gain as much points as your enemy, it's very risky to invest in air, especially now when he's trying to use air to pull off the push. And the Gepards seem to be doing their job in holding that off, and there's just going to come more and more AA now to stop that. One thing that I very much think that WarWolf is missing out on is that, as we talked before, this 88 came up, like his Tetrarchs are very good, but they're just defending in the very zone. They're only looking forward. If he would have brought those Tetrarchs back a little bit, he could have sneaked off kills on the P3s one by one with the Tetrarchs from the hill down into the open, engaging them one at a time. But now they've been standing here, not using anything until then Stanton chooses to push into the front with the Panzer III and the Tetrarch. When now Stanton has the advantage here because now he also has a P4 supporting it.
Yeah, it was pretty standard play for Vanguard player. He had very little token forces in the town for whole time. Of course, WarWolf took a bit of bad trades, but he had at least 3 times more points in the town at the beginning. Stanton invested much more into the left flank, into the hills, and we can see that right now he's double ticking enemy. He's slowly reinforcing the town, and middle hill is almost impossible to take back for the 6 Airborne, especially with complete air dominance or anti-air dominance for Stanton.
Yeah, and it's like you said, is that WarWolf had a lot of very even investment of his forces, even a bit on the heavier side on the city, while that really made him collapse, and heavy in air that doesn't hold the front line. And I think that Stanton played very well. Like, he really showed off that he knows the meta matchup here, is that he knew the map and what is often the meta on this map. And then he also knew, like, it seems like he also had the knowledge of the 6, that 6, even if, the Panzer IV is not good against the Tetrarchs, he still used a lot of the strength of his division that the 6th are not good at. So even if it looks very, very strong here for Stanton, I think just like last game, like Stanton really shows that he has a lot of the understandings here in this game, playing this way.
Yeah, and he also read the intentions of WarWolf pretty good. He had almost perfect composition to stop the town push. He also, like, if the bombing strike came to the town would probably collapse. The issue is that trading town for the hills on this map is not really good.
Yeah, I think that's just, like, I think still WarWolf is doing a lot of, he's still playing good. There's just some things, like, we see here that, of course, it's going to be tough when you're newer, is that, knowing the maps, is that we see that Stan has the more knowledge on the map. So I think that very much that WarWolf really can play certainly good. He has, so with some experience of the maps, he will understand that better and be able to really hold that back better, I think. And then also a bit more on the composition. One thing I do think that he's doing right here is that now, yes, you've lost the hill, so it's very looking very bad for you is that he's still trying to
Bit
not
epic 1 minute,
just
sorry.
send in one wave at a time to defend where he's losing. He's actually sending some points to where he had a lot of initial points. He's sending now on off map to the city to try to take, push there. As usually like you said, the Vanguard is usually quite weak where it's not pushing. Oh, and here we see, now. Oh, he stopped. He noticed it, but for the Cromwells fighting the Pumas now.
Yeah, and one thing which Stanton did really good is that, so 6 Airborne Air Force is pretty strong. Usually it's Air Force alone is able to stop a lot of pushes, but if you apply pressure, if you push, usually they don't have enough time to pay the cost back. Tempests are very good, Typhoons are very good, but they are still expensive piece of equipment.
Oh, wow. One thing also we notice now is that look at this infantry chain in the north. I think that's a lot of points. Like, that sounds like he's been like maybe one, maybe even two, like hovering 1 or 2 minutes of income. And if you're on the downside of income compared to your opponent, hovering income is a very risky thing.
Yep. Maybe he felt a bit overwhelmed with air micro, losing stuff to SPWs running around, losing ground pretty quickly. So, he was microing units to not lose them too quickly. And in the meantime, he just, hang out a lot of points.
And I think that when it comes to like newer players learning the game, I think 6th Airborne, as we said, it's like a very meta division, really, really strong. But I think that it's such, what do you call, like, it's such a pancake. Like, it's one or the other side. Like, in a game where it's, where the people aren't very, know what they're fighting against and are well versed in, like, the 6th Airborne strengths and weaknesses, I really feel like it's going to be a total pancake game where either the not 6th Airborne is going to, push the button of, like, light, medium tanks and roll over 6th, because I think that 6th, even if they're very strong, their weakness, if you don't know how to, like, defend against that weakness, they can still be totally steamrolled over. So I don't think, like, when it comes to Greenhorn, like, oh, he got 6th Airborne, you did a bad job banning or something, because 6th Airborne can still, very much be difficult to play, I think, correctly. And then also, but on the other side, if that, failure doesn't happen, then it's also very hard for the other player to actually know how to deal with just the air spam that 6th Airborne are capable of. So I feel like it's either that the player, if it's quite difficult to manage the downside of 6th Airborne, but if you do manage to manage that, it's going to be so hard for your opponent to actually deal with the strength of the division.
Yeah, a bit weird push from Stanton. Like, he lost almost 300 points in a second in the town. I'm not sure if he was pressured enough or he felt the blood in the air and he wanted to finish him. But unfortunately for him, he doesn't have a lot of combined forces, but he has a lot of infantry and off map to hold the ground and getting one flag. But one flag is not enough.
Yeah. And it's like you said, even though we're in B phase now, even in B phase, it's not that you're good with medium tanks. Yes, you have, like, some Cromwells, but here we're seeing, like, yes, you have a lot of infantry, but he can't really push forward because he has pushed forward several infantry, but they get melted by the armored cars and the Panzer force. So, and, like, yes, he's been able to slowly then take them out with his air, which is the right thing to do, and he's doing it, but it's just not happening fast enough for this game. And also, yes, combined arms is so important. Like, when you have a big amount of infantry spent, they're not, even if you spend a lot of points infantry, they're not doing anything right now because just a Panzer force and a Recon car is preventing them from actually pushing forward.
Yeah, pretty weird move from WarWolf, but it's working so far, bringing this AT gun, crossing the open field and slowly killing two mortar half tracks. Even maybe they will kill. Oh, they won't kill Panzer force. One thing I can give a tip to Stanton Warrior: if you bring a piece, use it. You brought 3 area pieces. 2 half-track mortars died in the without firing single shot. Nebel Warfare is sitting in supply track, also not firing at all. Usually this is like 300 points And maybe it's not happening this game, but 300 points sitting idle, it's most of the time enough to swing the game in favor of your opponent.
Yes, it's exactly like we said in previous games. It's so important to just have you know the mass of your forces fighting at the same time, because quantity is so important. And if you're then really able to utilize 100% of your quantity, even if you have the same amount, if you just utilize in a higher percent, it gets such a huge advantage.
Yep, certainly agree. Also, speaking about unused points, you have this flag 38 20mm. Of course, right now, single 28, even if you unload this with the AA track, won't stop the Tempest. But maybe before, when you had two Gepards online, it would help stopping the Mosquitoes and Tempest coming around. Now it's a bit too late, but it's still unused points.
Yes.
Tempest going for AA piece. Let's see if he succeeds on this task.
But yeah, this I think is one important thing that he's doing. As I think that's a very good play by WarWolf, and it's something that I know myself I'm very bad at and need to get better at. Is that especially important for divisions that are air heavy? Is that when you see your opponent has air, I'm sorry, when you see your opponent has AA, is that what you do is that when you have the opportunity, you use your air to bomb that AA or strafe it, etc. Yes, you can't just send a plane like this. Now, 6 airborne, you have the strength of your super air to be able to do that against lighter air, but doing it through either sending some artillery to pinning it first and then air to finish it off, or having something else shooting at the air and then air finishing off, like making sure that you mark where the AA is and then going in with your air for that AA or taking it out is very important.
All right. I see the dashing at 17 minute 24. Do you see it too?
Yeah, same here.
Okay. So
But I think this game is pretty. Even if Werewolf is taking the city, and we're closing to sea phase, I don't see really how he can stop the double tick much, because it's much easier, as we told, getting back into the city than it is in the south.
yeah, especially that Stanton realized that he's losing ground. He lost AA, he lost a lot of support equipment. He'll lose this Panzer 4 in the town soon, so he'll be down 3 flags in the town area. He decided to apply pressure in the left flank, which he won pretty much earlier, but he just decided to take the spawn. Okay, you take my town, I will take your spawn.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is like, I think both players played very well here for Greenhorns. It's like you said, like one thing that WarWolf, which is also difficult in the beginning, is to defend against those vanguard mass pushes. But what he did a lot of other things that was very good. Is that instead of just sending in one of the like critical errors many people do is that, oh, you're losing somewhere, you get 100 points income, then you send those 100 points in to attack where you're losing, and then you lose those 100, and then you do that over and over again, just losing more and more. Instead, he just tried to stabilize. Here you see it's just an air landing that held his last flag for a long time, and then spending points to retake flags in other areas, which actually made him not double tick for a long while. But yes, and then maybe you can retake that point you lost when your opponent is refocusing on retaking what you took from them. Of course, on this map it's extra hard, but the general